I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up on Visitor Network TV and Channel 99. Our guest today is Bob Egan, the recently retired president of the Egan Maritime Foundation. Welcome, Bob. It's nice to have you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
You've been president of the foundation for how long?
15 years.
15 years.
Yeah.
You basically came in to sort of launch things after Bud Egan's death.
Right.
And he was what, your uncle?
He was my uncle,
Mm-hmm.
and he owned marine lumber.
Right.
So when he passed away, at the reception after the funeral at the Jared Coffin House, Wayne Holmes, who's no longer with us, pulled Nat Philbrick and me into a side room and said, "By the way, your uncle wants you two to run his foundation." So that was the first we heard about that.
Interesting. Interesting. Anyway, you can look back over the last 15 years and look at some real accomplishments. Probably a couple of things that could have gone a little better, but
Sure.
But let's talk about. We won't talk about those. We'll only talk about the accomplishments.
That's okay.
What has it been the sort of the thrust of the foundation since it got up and going, and how has that direction changed, and what's happening now as you let go of the reins?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Somebody said, "Well, what do you do?" And we basically said, "Well, it's Nantucket Maritime, just not whaling." We felt that whaling was covered pretty well, and my uncle felt that way too. But he also felt, I think, that there was a lot other than whaling in terms of maritime and maritime history for Nantucket. So his focus was there, and Nat Philbrick was the founding director of Egan Maritime. So Nat was a natural to take it into the maritime history piece.
And that resulted in the press.
It did.
Yes.
So, and Mill Hill Press
we'll come back to that
is one of our affiliates. We have 3 affiliates and 1 outreach program that we do. But so what happened was we became fairly well endowed for a small island and small nonprofit when my aunt and uncle passed away. And we, as a board, tried to figure out how we wanted to expand the organization. So we went basically from a very general direction, I suppose, in terms of maritime history, to some specific things like the Shipwreck and Life-Saving Museum, which is one of our more visible affiliates, and Mill Hill Press, where we publish books that are unique to Nantucket and maritime communities. And then we do some outreach, the Maritime Festival in the fall down at Children's Beach, which is free and gets thousands of young families. And that's a kind of a throwback to Sea Fest that Eric Holk and Nat Philbrick came up with. So we do that. And then our latest venture is called Sea of Opportunities. And that is the curriculum that we've developed for the public and private schools, where we pay for the teachers and we are educating our children about maritime careers, trades, and sciences. And that is 3 years old, and it's gotten some real nice traction.
Let's go back to the Shipwreck Museum first. That was sort of, I don't know if it was serendipitous, but it kind of fell into the Egan Maritime Institute's lap, didn't it? Because it was having its own troubles.
It was, yeah. And we were approached by the folks at what was the Life-Saving Museum. And, they were running a small deficit, and sort of the leadership was getting a little long in the tooth. And so they approached us, and we sort of used that as a reason to hire our first real full-time executive director, and that was Gene Grimmer. So we technically acquired the Shipwreck, or the Life-Saving Museum, but the spirit of it was a merger. And that spirit was then, and it continues today, as really a merger of equals, and we work very well together. So,
and it's also given the Egan Maritime Institute a venue for special exhibits and so forth, which you previously had at the Coffin School, but that sort of went away. That's a whole other story.
Right.
And so you basically have a new exhibit there every year, do you not?
We do, and this year it's to honor the Coast Guard. And we also do a 9/11 celebration every year in conjunction with the hospital, and we honor folks who have saved others. So that's sort of a venue for an event like that that's really special, and it has a very local vibe to it. A lot of local folks show up because it's in September, September 11th, every year now. So, but we also allow folks to rent it occasionally to host things and parties, and they get a tour of the museum. And this week or next week rather, we're hosting 60 caddy campers there at 7 o'clock at night when they're available, and we're taking them through there to educate them about really what the whole story is out there, which is self-sacrifice and selflessness.
That's a noble endeavor. Turning to the Mill Hill Press, this is the latest publication. Just came out about a month ago, I guess.
Right. Did.
You want to talk about it a little bit?
Sure, a little bit. You know, I'm not an avid sailor. I'm more of a powerboat guy, but Alfie Sanford wrote this, and it's really a special, actually a sweet little book about cruising around Nantucket. And I've had sailors and other people come up to me and say that this has been a really useful book to them. And you would think that everybody in Nantucket knows about every little inlet and harbor and gunk hole, so to speak, in Nantucket, but they don't. And this has been really helpful. And it's available at both bookstores and on our website at eganmaritime.org.
What are some of the other ones you've put out? I mean, you started with a book by Nat Philbrick, right? That was the first one.
Right.
And yeah, that was before he really got famous.
right. It was, and that's a whole other story with Nat and his fame. But so we've written books, and I'm not sure I'll get all the titles right, but we've written about the natural history of Nantucket, farming on Nantucket. You know, we wrote the definitive work on Maria Mitchell.
Very definitive.
Very definitive, 900 pages of definitive. But, you know, it's pretty much the reference book now for Maria Mitchell. So we've undertaken projects like that. And we've had a lot of support from our trustees who have funded some of these projects.